what does it take in order for you to have a CEO mindset? If you've been following the 9 steps in order for you to build a portfolio career, you'll see that I have 3 clear phases that you can follow. So phase 1 is the core phase, and this is centered around context around yourself and the market and the opportunities that exist. The second step is the contract, so different types of contracts, which ones you should take, which ones you shouldn't take. The third one is centered around making sure that you have the cash, you manage it, you maintain it, you grow it, all of that stuff. The second phase is centered around growth. So this is content distribution, this is coaching, and this is also developing community. And the final phase, which is all centered around leverage, so learning and scaling, this is centered around codifying what you know, developing the capability, and finally adopting the CEO mindset, which is what we're talking about right now. And so when thinking about the CEO mindset, being an executive, being a director, when I reflect on my life, I have a very, very small company. It's me and my virtual assistant, and I also have a volunteer who's supporting us as well, which I'm very blessed to have. And so I'm not there yet. However, I've been exposed to many different directors and executives, not only in my previous permanent sort of like employment life, but also as a consultant and contractor. So as a program management professional, typically what happens is I'm working to a director, I'm working with other directors, and I'm also reporting into executives as well. Also, being a trustee and non-executive director for a membership organization and also the chair of the Risk and Finance Committee, there is a clear understanding of what my expectations are when it comes to working with, let's say, for example, the senior leadership team and or the CEO and or the deputy CEO, amongst other trustees and non-executive directors. And so there's a whole flurry of experience that I personally have in terms of my thoughts when it comes to this stuff. And of course, this will be developing and growing, but I at least want to share my insights with you in terms of what my thoughts are. So I've got my notes here to support me here. Now, there is a document that I believe was developed in 2003, but you can check this if I'm wrong, known as the Higgs Report. So check out the Higgs Report, and it talks to what is required for you to be an effective non-executive director or trustee or board member and all of this stuff there. Why do I keep on coming back to non-executive directorship when I'm talking about CEO mindset? Well, really and truly, if the CEO makes the non-executive director happy in some way, shape and form, then that means you're doing a good job as a CEO. And so I'm using this as a framework in order for you to understand how academia and the real world has come across managing this. So the first thing is to make sure that you are strategic by nature. What is strategy? It is the approach that you take in order for you to produce unique and positive value for your clients or audience or community. And so you have to think about these different steps. So when I think about strategy, I think about these things. The first thing is analysis. So what is your analysis telling you in terms of the market, in terms of opportunities, in terms of if you're sticking to your vision, your mission, and all these different things there, your vision being the place that you want to be in the future, okay, the place that you want to see. It's something that's measurable by nature. Your mission being the thing that you say that you do, your values being the thing that's really important to you. So how are you making sure that you align to those things based on what the market is telling you? So analysis is really key in this stuff. And so I'm not saying you have to analyze as the CEO eventually, but you have to have a clear idea of what the opportunities are. So that intel needs to come back to you. The second part is planning. So you need to have capabilities that plan based on the decisions that you make on the analysis that has happened, so to speak. And so we go from analysis to planning, and then finally we have implementation. You want to be able to implement fast, especially if you're small and nimble. You can do things quickly. And so when I think about strategy, I think about those different things there. And so the second thing is performance. So really, you have to be in a position where you have good measurables and metrics. Like if it's not measured, it doesn't exist. And so you can't be in an environment where you're growing something or building this career where you don't measure your own performance. So you have to think about, how do I measure my performance? But also the performance of the thing that you're building. It could be a service, it could be a product, it could be a membership, it could be subscriptions, it could be a whole host of things. How do you measure success? And I'm going to talk about ways in which you can measure success adopting this CEO mindset. The next thing is centered around risk. So I'm going to say risks and issues and financial controls. So Is money coming in? Like the basic definition of a business is commercial activity. Or another definition for it is supply is meeting demand. So is the supply that you have meeting the demand that's in the market right now? Do you need to create that demand? Do you need to find that demand? Do you have enough supply? Again, a lot of us focus purely on the supply element, i.e. trying to build something that's great, but you don't know, you haven't tested to see if there's real demand. And so thinking about risk, it's taking into consideration what things could happen that could be really bad and how do you mitigate against that stuff. And issues are the things that are happening right now. How are you making sure those things are resolved in many ways, shapes and forms? And from a finance standpoint, are you ensuring there's viability? You know, what is your OPEX, so your operating expenditure, versus your revenue or cash made? Those are two different things. What is the lifetime value of your clients and or customers? So think about all of these things. Again, you may not be doing the heavy lifting on this stuff, but you need metrics to help you understand the health of your portfolio career, your business, the thing that you're trying to do. The next thing that you need to have is performance. No, people, should I say. And so this is making sure that you have the right talent in place, you have the right leadership in place, and you have the right succession planning in place. And so this is about developing and cultivating a system that makes sense. And so with all these 4 different attributes, or I guess traits, this determines a strong CEO mindset, because when it comes to board decisions, when it comes to how a non-executive director will scrutinize a CEO, they have these things in mind. Now, of course, above all things, there need to be, I don't like saying softer skills, but certain sort of like behaviors that you need to have. So one of them is integrity and high ethical standards. And so this is common sense. Like, make sure you treat people with respect. Make sure you're not treating or cheating anybody in any way, shape or form. Make sure that you have the right level of human understanding, you know, and you're making sure you're not doing anything that's wrong or mischievous. Don't do anything that you wouldn't want to do in public or in front of your mother, essentially. The second thing is sound judgment. And so sound judgment has to come from gaining feedback. Feedback in many different ways. Feedback from your peers, feedback from those above you, feedback from those below you, feedback from those beside you. This can come in the form of data, so quantitative or qualitative data. This can come in the form of reading new things and articles and all of that kind of stuff there. So again, being able to assimilate all of this information allows you to be in a position where you can have sound judgment. So you have to be experienced, you have to be learned, you have to know different things. And this is a continuous thing that you need to develop. How are you getting intel? So find ways to provide intel for yourself in the most efficient ways possible. The other thing is the ability and willingness to challenge and probe. So what I mean by this is, if something's not going right, you want to have the ability to basically call it out firmly, but not in a rude manner. Okay, so this is how you're able to grow and get to the next level, because you don't just have a first principles mindset. You're not afraid to just be open and honest. This is so fundamental and key. And finally, you need to have strong interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills. What does this mean? So between or amongst people, the ability to communicate well, say things well, smile, you know, sort of like the behavioral skills, all of it. This is all centered around good emotional agility, good emotional intelligence, good leadership, persuasion, all of this kind of stuff there that we've spoken about before. And you develop that by adopting a good coaching and mentoring mindset. Okay, so effective questions, powerful questions, really strong, active and deep listening, great feedback, motivation and encouragement, all of these different things. You be the coach when somebody is learned and experienced within a certain space and they need a different way of thinking about things and they need to get to the next step. You be a mentor when someone is fresh and new and doesn't know what to do. And so balance between the two when it comes to this stuff. And so another thing that I want to draw to is a document that I read by Bayes Business School. And they talk about this notion of a balanced scorecard, which is essentially a neat way of having four criteria that help you assess the performance and health of your business, of your career path, whatever it may be. And so they've split it up into 4 main distinct perspectives. So customer, so how do stakeholders, beneficiaries, donors, all of that kind of stuff there, How do we really meet achieving the satisfaction of the customers? How are we measuring that? Are we using NPS scores? Are we using customer satisfaction surveys which are related to that? Is there any feedback that we've received? So this is really good because this defines the front line. Next, we have operations or business processes. So what does a well-oiled sort of business environment, all of that kind of stuff look like? And so this is making sure that you have KPIs for different metrics. So the efficiency of things, how fast things are done, the duration and how long things are done, the sort of operation processes that are in place, all of this kind of jazz. Then we have learning and growth. So how do we contribute to improvement? How do you bring in the right resources, capability, and talent? What does that specifically look like as well? And so this is about having the right learning and development. So making sure there's continuous learning and development. This is making sure there's the right appraisals and meetings and reviews and ensuring that, you know, all of these things are in place. This is having succession planning. This is having the right culture. So culture starts at the top with the leadership. These are all things to bear in mind. So for me, leadership is living by example. And so you have to live by example when it comes to this stuff. And finally, we have financial. So again, how are we making our money? What does revenue look like against expenditure? Okay. Are there any assets that are doing well compared to last year? How are we planning in terms of our budget? Are we on track? Are we not on track? What do those models look like? And so it's called a balanced scorecard because these are all ways in which they all affect each other. So if you have good leadership potential, you're more likely going to get good financial growth and everything else. So bear all of this stuff in mind. But the way you use a balanced scorecard is you have some sort of canvas that has key strategic elements on there, such as your vision, mission, and I would say objectives, and then initiatives that back those objectives, and they should come from the balanced scorecard. So what you may have is, let's say for example, for financial health, you may have like 3 key initiatives that support that also have 3 key KPIs or, you know, key results or whatever it may be. And then you may have one of those 3 that you're looking to help you understand good financial health. So for example, a way to measure that may be, let's say for example, your expenses divided by your revenue. And so the bigger that number, then again, the worse off you are. And I think I've done the maths right. But essentially, if your expenses are small, then you're going to get a small number, which is what you're looking for. But if you've got high expenses, then you're going to get a bigger number, which is not what you're looking for. So that will give you an idea of how well you're doing financially as an organization, a company, a portfolio careerist, whatever it may be. And of course, you can apply this to yourself and your small team. It doesn't have to be as solid and robust, but these are things to think about. And so when it comes to the CEO mindset, remember, you've got those different key things centered around strategy. You've also got people, risk, and performance. Then you've also got the behavioral side of things, or the traits, which is centered around integrity, sound judgment, willingness to probe and challenge, and also use strong interpersonal skills. And then you've got the 4 perspectives, which are centered around customer, business operations, learning and growth, and finances as well. So these are all ways to not only act and behave, but also be and also measure success as well. So hopefully this has given you some insights. There's so much more I could say about this, and I have my own philosophy about this when it comes to leadership in general. But again, if you want to see more things centered around portfolio careers or independent consulting or contracting, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.